you know all lands in Nigeria are owned by the federal government? Yes, even the land that is inherited or bought with your hard-earned money, they are all owned by the federal government. So stay with me while I walk you through the exact land documentation processes and documents you need to validate your land, whether you inherited that land or you bought that land. So if you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell if you found this video interesting and quite educating. As a result of the Land Use Act in 1978, all lands are owned by the federal government. Now, if you inherited a land or you bought a land, the government leases out that land for 99 years. After that, the government comes back for that land. So if you get the necessary documentations right, whenever the government comes back to acquire that land, you will be duly compensated. But if you don't get your necessary documentations right, you will stand the chance of losing your inheritance or your hard-earned money. So stay with me while I walk you through the necessary land documentations you need to validate your landed property. So before the Land Use Act, individuals own land for selfish reasons. Most individuals do not release or refuse to sell or give out landed properties. But because of development, the government had to come in and take over all the lands in Nigeria to foster development and infrastructure. So that is why in 1978, the government enacted the Land Use Act. So anyone who owns a landed property must do the necessary landed documentations right in order not to lose his or her land. So now I'm going to walk you through the necessary land documentations you need to validate your landed property. Now, so when an individual buys a land or inherits a land, the first thing he should do is a survey plan. Now, what is a survey plan? A survey plan is a landed document which shows the actual location, size, and coordinates of a parcel of land. Now, most times, this survey plan is also used to ascertain the lands that are free from government acquisition. In my subsequent video, I'm going to educate you on the difference between government acquisition land and free lands. When you come to a community, the government is the owner of the land mass you find in that community. Now, what happens is that the government gives 30% of this land to the host community through excision. When you're buying the land and you hear a realtor or a land agent tell you that this landed document has excision in progress, please run for your life. Because excision in progress is not a land document you can hold on to for your land to be secured. Now, what happens in excision in progress is that a host community applies for a particular portion of land from the government through excision. It takes years or months for the government to approve of such application. So sometimes the government approves, sometimes the government denies. So if you go ahead to buy such a property and the government turns out not to approve that property, that means you've lost your money. So I always advise my clients not to invest in any property that is having excision in progress. You stand the chance of either losing your land or gaining your land. The choice is yours to make. So the host community of that village applies to the government to lease out this 30% of land for their personal use. So they apply through excision. Now the government, it takes the government some months, some years, depending on, to approve. If the land is eventually approved with an excision number, the land is taken to the Surveyor General's office of that state and is gazetted. Now, what is a gazette? A gazette is a big register where all lands that have been excised by the government are registered. A gazette is also a land title, because with the gazette you can further apply for C of O, that's certificate of occupancy. Now, how is this done? With the Gazette, you can now take it further to the land registry to apply for the certificate of occupancy using the Gazette document. And this, most times it takes years, sometimes months, for the government to sign it. But once it's been signed, then you are a bona fide owner of that property. The C of O is given to a landed property only once. After that, apart from if the owner of that property that has already that the C of O is written on his name decides to sell that property, then the government cannot issue any C of O again. Rather, what you get is deed of assignment. So what is a deed of assignment? A deed of assignment is a title document which is used to transfer ownership of landed properties from one person to another. It's used to transfer land ownership from a land seller to a land buyer, which sometimes a land seller is called assignor, then the land buyer is called assignee. Most of the times, deed of assignment contains the history of how the land was owned, was transferred from one person to another. Yes, of course, the deed of assignment is a legit landed document. The next thing you need to know is the land receipt. Of course, when you buy anything in the market, you should have a receipt to that to show for it. So in the same way, landed properties also have receipts when you buy from an individual or a real estate firm. The receipt, of course, it contains the name of the buyer of that landed property and also the payment made towards that land to secure it. Now, in case you want to buy a landed property and you want to buy it with your wife, now make sure that that receipt or the name on the document you're using, the name on your document is going to bear, for example, Mr. Okonkwo and Mrs. Okonkwo. Don't do Mr. and Mrs. Okonkwo, because the reason is that when dealing with land, you are seen as one person. The first person's name on that land, of course, is the owner of the land. So if you say Mr. and Mrs. Okonkwo, I mean the land will be given to one person. So make sure when dealing with landed documents, the name that should be in it should clearly state the persons that are owners of that property. For example, using my name for example now, Mr. Promise and Mrs. Joy Promise Obioma. So these are two entities. So when buying the land, make sure the landed document is written, the ownership of the lands are clearly spelled. So I hope this video was helpful to you. Please do well to type in a comment and ask your questions also in places you're still not clarified. You can also ask your questions and also drop in necessary topics you would want me to treat, and I'll do justice to that. Thank you. See you next time. Bye.